It's Saturday! I'm joined this week by Harry, and this is the Football Natter. So, Harry, what are we going to talk about this week?
We're going to be reflecting on a selection of last week's games, our reaction to the New England squad, and once again, our previews for this weekend's coming Premier League fixtures.
Let's get right into it. So, one of the fixtures I think you decided to select was Bournemouth-Man United. So Man United only just winning 2-1 in the 92nd minute thanks to Rashford. So, kind of scraping past Bournemouth, really. What do you think of that?
Yeah, so obviously chose that one because last week we talked about Bournemouth, didn't we? And like how well they're doing, especially under Eddie Howe. And I've got to say, like my opinion's not changed at all. I don't know about you because they put in a really good performance. You know, they had 49% possession. It was pretty much 50-50 the whole way through. They were really unlucky to lose that game.
I tell you what, that game really kind of summed up Manchester United's start to the season.
Yeah.
Now what's good for Manchester United is that they've shown that they can come from behind. So they've come from behind against Newcastle, came to draw with Chelsea 2-2, and obviously coming from behind after going 1-0 down within 11 minutes to Bournemouth. I mean, you've got to give credit to Bournemouth to go against a team, you know, Manchester United, yeah, they're 7th, but they're Manchester United at the end of the day, on paper, and the players, even though they might be out of form, if you looked at Bournemouth, Manchester United as kind of a non-football fan, you're going to look at it thinking, why on earth have Manchester United not absolutely smashed them? Who are Bournemouth? So the fact that Bournemouth have kind of stood up against Manchester United, gone 1-0 up, shall we not forget it, gone 1-0 up against Manchester United, you know, one of the best keepers in the world in De Gea, and only just scraped past them in the 92nd minute. I think, once again, we've got to give credit to the way Eddie Howe set up his team.
I think we really do, and I just want to mention Callum Wilson. He just doesn't stop, does he? He's scored again, which is good because he's on my fantasy football team. Yeah, you're so right about Man United, to be honest. Like, a non-football fan certainly would think, what is going on here? Bournemouth, who are they? They just talk posh. I didn't know they even played football. And, you know, Man United, it goes on to maybe a bigger topic, doesn't it? About them, about their style, about the manager, Jose Mourinho. You know, in my opinion, they're not doing enough. You know, they scraped by in a fixture they really should be dominant in. You know, despite an impressive win over Juve, which we'll go into a bit more later, I just don't think they're doing enough. Like, their style is not exciting the fans. I have a lot of friends who are Man United fans, and, you know, they're not excited. And despite, you know, some decent results, they're not doing the performance which goes alongside that.
Yeah, I think since since Alex Ferguson left, Manchester United haven't really kind of been the best team to watch. You know, under Van Gaal, you had fans screaming attack, 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 and Jose Mourinho has never been known for pretty football.
No.
And at the end of the day, when you bring on Fellaini and shove him up front for half an hour, you're not going to play nice on the floor football like Manchester City do. What was interesting that came out today actually is that Jose Mourinho says his side need to grow up. So he was talking about how basically they're going to lose more matches if they don't grow up and start well. Obviously, let's talk about Juventus now. Okay. So the teams were very much. I mean, from what I've seen, from what I saw of the game, Juve were very unlucky, not to go like 3-4-0 up. You had Dybala hitting the post and the bar, with De Gea just flat-footed for a lot of the game. But they just show character to come back from 2-1, come back from 1-0 down to win 2-1 in the way that they did it, and maybe this is the kind of turning point for Jose Mourinho.
Yeah.
He said that they're the team that's not going to give up, and maybe the fact that now Pogba is kind of come back into his form, this is the kind of chance, especially this weekend playing the Manchester Derby against City. Do you think that this is their chance to kind of say, let's actually, you know, get things right again and let's secure a place in the top 4?
I mean, it's definitely a chance, and of course you can't rule any team out, even if it is against City. You know, last season when they went out there, I think it was a 3-2 victory against City, and that really changed the fans' mentality towards their club. If they can do that, I don't know, maybe the spirit around Manchester United can change and they'll go on. But going back to Juventus, Juventus is everything that Man United should be. They're setting a great role model. They've got fantastic players in every single position on the field. And not just that, it doesn't matter about their age. They play maturely, they play professionally, and they play with a killing edge. I know they lost, but I think that was definitely an anomaly. And it was, again, an unlucky own goal from Alexandro that really sealed that for them, and a moment of brilliance from Juan Mata.
Well, it's the first time that Juventus actually lost at home
Wow.
this season. So that kind of shows you. I think maybe even lost at all. I think it might even be the first time Juventus have actually been beaten this season. So that kind of shows you how strong they are.
Yeah, they're unbeaten in Serie A, I believe. They've been doing so well. And they've already won the title, pretty much. That is usual for them. That is usual. But this season's even better, I think, with the inclusion of Ronaldo. I would argue that a lot of people see them as favourites to go on and win the Champions League, wouldn't you?
Well, I think if you've got Ronaldo in your team, you've got a hell of a chance. Juventus have gone for the Champions League. Obviously, quite a few. They've got to the final quite a few times in the past few years. And they've always kind of fell at the final hurdle. I think what they kind of hope by bringing Ronaldo in, that not only have they got arguably the best player in the world, or the joint best player in the world, they've got somebody that is going to finally get them over the edge and win them a Champions League title because of his record in the Champions League.
Do you think, then, that Man United need that man like Cristiano Ronaldo, or is it a wider issue with the team, or is it the manager, or is it a combination of issues?
It's never a player that makes a team. Ronaldo on his own wouldn't make a difference at Manchester United because you're still going to have Smalling and Phil Jones at the back conceding stupid goals. So the whole way that Manchester United play, I just don't think they've got the players which suits Mourinho's style completely. Because we've seen like Martial getting benched, Rashford going out on the wing. I mean, it's nice to see that actually in the past few games when he's brought on Rashford, he's played up front. That, his natural position, and that's where he first broke onto the scene. We first saw that kind of bright spark, which we thought, hello, there's a great player here. So it's nice that he's actually finally playing Rashford up front. But Manchester United have needed a big squad overhaul since Sir Alex Ferguson left.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the players Sir Alex had at Manchester United were rubbish, but Sir Alex Ferguson was a manager who could make Tom Cleverley look like Iniesta. Yeah. However he did it, Manchester United didn't need to have the best players in the world to be the best team in the world. And unfortunately, now that Sir Alex has left, I don't think there's any other manager that can make the best team in the world without the best players in the world. And so Manchester United needs squad overhaul. We saw in the summer that they tried to bring players like Godin from Atletico Madrid on deadline day. Didn't work. They hoped that by bringing in Lindelof from Benfica a couple of years ago that they were going to get this world-class centre-back who's going to come to the Premier League and light it up, and all he's really been is a flop. But yeah, I think, in answering to your question, Ronaldo wouldn't change Manchester United. Of course, he's going to add load, but you could say they had their chance in the past, and now he's at Juve. He's never going to go back to Manchester United. The only place he'd probably go is Sporting to finish his career. So on to Wolves versus Tottenham. Obviously, Wolves only just losing out, and that was probably a tough result on Wolves, really, because they did so well in the game to match Tottenham, and only just losing out.
Again, this game was very close. I was looking at stats. Do you know the possession and shots on target was identical to that of the last game we just covered? So that was 49% for Wolves, which is quite good going out at the side against Tottenham, So, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think this game epitomises Spurs. They were doing so well in the first half. They showed a killing edge. They were almost ruthless. 3-0 up at one point, but then they just stopped. They just let go. It was almost like they were bottling it within a single game, and they were just letting Wolves come at them. There was little structure after Moussa Dembele got injured in the 7th minute, which might be a worry for the future. It feels like the central midfielder spot really needs filling. Because I think they've got plenty of options at attacking midfield. They've got Mora, Lamella, Ali, Son. I don't know if Eriksen's coming back anytime soon, but central midfield. Sissoko's been putting in a good shift. But do you really think Eric Dyer is going to be enough for Tottenham.
The whole Tottenham at the minute, obviously they've got their new stadium, which is actually starting to look finished now. Actually looks quite nice. But they've got this new stadium, and it's kind of this new era for them going into their new stadium that they want to become. They want to win the Premier League, obviously. They would hope under Mauricio Pochettino, although the only sign we've seen of that is a few years ago when Leicester won it and Spurs bottled it. We've known for a while that Tottenham, they're not the best against the mid-table sides in the Premier League. Why that is, we don't know. They perform really well against City a lot of the time. They perform well against teams like Manchester United. They're going to get up for the derby, but for mid-table teams, they often seem quite shaky to me. And like you said, Dembele isn't the player he was a couple of years ago when he was actually storming around the midfield.
I agree.
Dyer isn't the player a couple of years ago when he first signed. When Dyer first signed, we thought, wow, what a great sign for Spurs. He was running the midfield. He's versatile. He could play centre back, centre mid. He could score from corners. He's a threat for Tottenham. And he's just kind of withered away. Whether it's because he's kind of become too obvious to opposition players that they can read him too easily. I mean, he's still getting called to the England squad, so he's got to have some quality about it. And maybe we are being too harsh on him. But I don't know. Wolves have had such a good start to the season, and they're going to be such a threat to a lot of the big teams this season because they've got no fear. They're going to go at the big teams in the league, and that's what Tottenham have had to watch out for. And we've seen now Tottenham only just scraped through, so you can't afford to be complacent against Wolves this season, whether you're a lower mid-table team or whether you are a top team like Manchester United, like we've seen with Arsenal or Liverpool this season. You've really got to put out all the stocks just to beat Wolves, and that's the good thing about the Premier League. There is quality all throughout most places. Excluding Huddersfield, but there's quality. There's quality among most teams in the Premier League, which means you can get upsets, and Wolves are certainly, I think, going to cause lots of upsets this season.
Going back to Huddersfield, I did get that one right, 1-0.
All right,
yeah. And also, going back to Eric Dyer, I think ever since he got that prison cut, it's all been going downhill. But seriously, I'd pretty much agree. Shaky against mid teams, it's probably because against the big teams, Tottenham do have a bit less money than the other members of the top six. They don't have maybe so much to prove. Maybe that's the club mentality. Whereas mid-table, they really should be winning. They know they should be winning, and they don't win enough. They do win a lot, but they don't win enough. And yeah, I know we're talking quite negatively considering they won 3-2, but it's just the style of play, it's just the kind of mentality in the team when they're 3-0 up that worries me, really.
Okay, so let's go on to the big game from last weekend, Arsenal-Liverpool. What did you make of that?
It was kind of surprising, because Arsenal were quite dominant in this game. They had 60% possession. You could say that they didn't really make enough of it because they only got 4 shots on target. So, that's not a crazy amount. But I was watching parts of the game and I thought, to be honest, Arsenal, they do seem to be playing quite well under Emery. Don't you? I mean, I think that formation, the way he's holding them together, the way they are attacking quite frequently, playing with the ball, is pretty effective.
When Arsene Wenger left, we all thought it's going to take ages for Arsenal to adapt under a new manager after such a kind of ascendancy from Wenger. It's going to take so long for them to kind of adapt and bring in the new style of play. But it's like watching Arsenal from the 90s and the kind of early millennium era. It's fast, it's quick, it's on the floor. You've got players like Lacazette, Mkhitaryan, Aubameyang, who's just won Player of the Month, Lucas Torreira, who's been an absolute amazing addition in the midfield. He completely runs his show. He can run all game. He picks up the ball. He plays it quickly, and that's probably what Arsenal have missed. Somebody who can pick the ball up and get it gone. Because often under the last years of Wenger, we saw a bit of kind of lackluster, kind of boring, because they would keep more possession of the ball rather than play like Manchester City do now and move it quickly and get up the pitch quickly. And that's what I think we're starting to see under Emery, and that's the kind of style he wants to bring in. Obviously, we know Arsenal have never been great defensively, and with kind of Bellerin being made to play so high up to kind of support that attacking play. They do look weak at times. Their performances have definitely improved over the last few because obviously they're unbeaten in 11, 12 games in a row. And against Liverpool, they were good. They played like no one expected to. Liverpool, for the team that they are, they seem to be this season to be scoring 3-4 goals a game.
Just not this one.
Yeah, just not this one. But I think that, again, that's credit to Arsenal's defence in this game, and that actually they stepped up. But the one kind of Liverpool player I'd like to kind of talk about and kind of do a little bit of a feature on is James Milner. Obviously, he scored the goal, but I mean, he has just looked brilliant, not only last season, but he's come out again this season, and he just looks top class.
Considering his age, considering he's retired from the England team, considering the fact he started playing football when he was 14 years old, he's doing brilliantly, and maybe that means he has more years in him. He's developing his football intelligence. He's been almost ruthless in that midfield, you know. He's not letting anything through. He's putting in such a hard shift for his team. I think that he's been quite important to their success so far, whether you like his style of play or not, because he's not maybe the most creative, he's not maybe the most skilled, but he does get the job done. You know, you think that, just one last thing on Arsenal is, I think that you're right, you know, Torreira's been a good addition, and in my opinion, Guendouzi's been an even better addition, in fact, because I think he will last for years. But they really need that consistent creativity, which is going to be the one worry for them, because despite having a lot of possession, as I said, they didn't make a lot of it, and Ozil on form can be great, but he isn't always the most consistent, and that's what they're going to really need to succeed.
Okay, so that is the reflection on last week sorted. Let's move on to the kind of the big topic of the week, and that is the England squad. So, obviously, everyone has heard for kind of a couple of weeks that Wayne Rooney was always going to get called back for the friendly against the USA for the Wayne Rooney Foundation. But what was kind of interesting in the news was that kind of Wayne Rooney having to justify being called up to have a proper send-off. Do you kind of agree that Wayne Rooney does have to be justified to be in that England squad? If he wants
his like proper like end, if he wants a bit of a fun goodbye, whatever. I don't know why people are making so much fuss over it, because it isn't big, is it? At the end of the day, it's not a big important game. It's just a friendly. It's just a bit of fun. I'm not particularly bothered by it personally. So if people are complaining about it so much, you know, they should just worry less, because the young players or whoever they want to see play and get game time are going to against Croatia, I'm sure, because Gareth Southgate has always stressed the importance of playing youth and developing them. So, you know, it doesn't need to be made a big deal of. Just let him have his, you know, goodbye, and that's that.
Really agree with that. So the kind of the big news about the England squad is that Callum Wilson has finally been called up. After scoring 6 Premier League goals already this season, he's been called up to the squad for the first time. And kind of on top of that, we see Lewis Dunk get called up from Brighton, so a team obviously in good form. He has been playing very well for Brighton, you can't deny that. Brighton have been really good so far this season. Of course, if you want to talk about Brighton, email thefootballnatter@gmail.com. Getting the plugs in there. So, on top of Lewis Dunk, Michael Keane has been recalled after a year of not being included in the squad. And obviously, winger Jadon Sancho, who's only 18, retains his place, while Maddison and Mason Mount go out, which is, I think, it's a little bit unfortunate for Maddison, because I think he's been very good. And we talked about him last week, but I think he's been very good in the Premier League. Obviously, you've got to find somewhere to make way for Dele Alli and Jesse Lingard, there's no doubt about that. But because Wayne Rooney is only playing in the friendly against USA, could they not call up James Maddison to kind of have a chance of, you know, playing against Croatia in the Nations League? Because he's been brilliant. But obviously we talked about Maddison last week, so I don't want to go too much into him.
Yeah.
But Jadon Sancho, what are your thoughts on him and his kind of rise almost since leaving Manchester City last year to go to Dortmund, and now he's tearing at the Bundesliga and he's in the England squad?
I'm a massive fan of Jadon Sancho. I've been watching little things of him whenever I can, little highlights, whatever. And, well, the stats speak for themselves, really, don't they? You know, 4 goals, 6 assists in 10 games, and not even all of those he's started. It's been quite impressive from the youngster, to be honest. And a Croatia game for them, for England, is brilliant. But for Sancho, it's even better, honestly, because that gives him a chance to show on a big stage to all the fans who might not know who he is, because obviously he plays in a different league, just who Jadon Sancho is and what he can do. And I'm really excited to see him play.
Obviously, Danny Welbeck, he's still been included in the squad, even though he got that ankle injury and had to go off on a stretcher against Sporting on Thursday night. So we'll see what happens with Danny Welbeck. What was interesting is what Gareth Southgate said about Callum Wilson, is that he described him as a threat who can run in behind defences, and he described him including in the squad as to seeing how he fits into the system. So my question to you is, do you think he fits into the system?
Yeah, as you've already heard from earlier and maybe even last episode, I'm just a massive fan of him. I just rate him so highly because, don't worry, I'm not a Bournemouth fan, but I kind of wish I was, to be honest. No, he's so right. He gets in behind, he's lethal and he's clinical. And, sometimes England have missed a clinical striker. In the World Cup, Sterling was playing at striker, sometimes, or almost like a second striker, and he just wasn't clinical enough, was he? Maybe you wonder, if we had Wilson in the squad at the time in this kind of form, what would that have done? What does this mean for the future? Are we going to have a second striker other than Harry Kane who's going to provide the goals?
Well, Harry Kane's an interesting one because everybody speculated in the last few games of the World Cup that he'd maybe got an injury because he wasn't looking like the player that had played against Panama or Tunisia. And he almost played a deeper role. And so, is it that he's brought in Callum Wilson because he thinks, well, if Kane's going to drop off, Sterling, if he gets in behind, isn't going to have the clinicality that a proper, striker, or has always played striker, Callum Wilson, that if he gets in behind, he's got a hell of a better chance than finishing than Sterling?
I think partially, because Sterling obviously has been absolutely crazy so far this season, hasn't he? And you'd hope that, almost like the last game that we played England, you'd hope that he'd go out there and he'd repeat, that kind of thing, and he'd go out and he'd score the goals. But is Wilson just going to add to that? Is it going to be that both of them almost play? Is Wilson almost going to play a bit wider, do you think? Is that possible?
I think you're ruining a great chance to score goals if you put Wilson out wide. If you could put anyone out wide, put Jesse Lingard. The last couple of games, Rashford started up front with Kane. So is it that he's going to bring in Callum Wilson off the bench again, or start him against the USA and bring off the bench against Croatia? Or is he that he's going to go straight ahead in the Nations League and start Callum Wilson? Answering your question, if you put him out wide, you're just going to ruin your chance of scoring. Put Sterling out wide. Sterling scores plenty of goals out wide for City because of the way that they playing it to the far post. And usually he can finish when it's 2 yards out. But Callum Wilson's the player which is adapted to scoring harder chances. You've got to give him a chance in this England squad. You can't just call him up just for the experience of being in an England squad. You've got to play him. You've got to see, like Southgate says, to see if he works.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I wouldn't be so happy to see Callum Wilson out wide. And it's interesting to see that you don't think that that's a possibility. I wonder then, will Harry Kane drop back a bit? Not just as the game progresses, but, in the starting lineup, can we see a maybe deeper Harry Kane? Because for Tottenham, Moura has been at that striker position. And it's interesting because he's had to come deep so much. Do you think that Southgate has picked up that he is quite effective in that role?
Well, Harry Kane's always going to score goals wherever you put him on the pitch. I think that's the one exception. You could probably start Harry Kane out wide and he'd score goals. I mean, I'm not saying he'd play well there for 90 minutes, but if he gets a chance, he's going to score a goal. But I just think with England playing with a back three, they need two strikers. You've got people like Lingard to play behind them. Don't make Kane drop deeper and compact the midfield already more than it is already. So I say leave Kane and Wilson up front. Let them play off each other. Let's just see in the friendly and the the Nations League game against Croatia. Let's just see how they play. Just do a bit of experiment. I think that's what international friendlies are between major competitions. All they are experiments. Going into that next major competition, who plays well together? And it's building those relationships a year, 2 years in advance. So when you get to those major competitions, you've got partnerships all over the pitch, which put you in a better chance of, doing well at the tournament.
So obviously the kind of attackers of the England squad. But should we talk about some defenders maybe? We touched on them earlier. So Marco Silva has recently said, we are seeing the real Michael Keane. Do you think we're seeing the real Michael Keane?
Is there actually a Michael Keane? That's good. Oh, Joe. I mean, Everton's done well. There's, no doubt about that. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve a chance to kind of be in the England squad, but I suppose with Harry Maguire being injured, it's given him a chance. It's kind of opened the door for him. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve his chance, but I don't know. I just don't know how well he's gonna play, because are him and Stones similar players? Obviously, across that back line, that back three in particular, you've got Walker. Obviously, plays very well because he can play out from the back. He's quick. He's got good positioning, and I think being under Guardiola, his position has improved so much. So he's very versatile along the back kind of line. Stones, I think, ever since Gareth Southgate's moved to this back three formation, he's been an ever-present almost, because he has the ball playing ability, and although he's still relatively young, and he's going to get better, he knows the game very well. And again, being under Guardiola, he's been able to have been coached how to play the game and how to play out from the back, and not kind of what we saw in the early Stone years, which was a lot of panicking and, oh my god, I've got the ball, there's a player run at me, what do I do? But it's where Keane fits in. Does kind of Southgate revert to a back four and only play Stones and kind of Dunk? Or does Dunk go in instead of Maguire? Or does Keane go in? Because I kind of look at it and think, well, Keane isn't really going to add something different, which Maguire does. But, like I've just said, it's all about kind of experimenting. It's a friendly against the USA, so I'm happy to experiment. I don't know. I just think Keane isn't. I just don't think Keane is the answer.
I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I think Southgate's kind of already got an idea for the defenders that he's going to bring to maybe even Euro 2020. Honestly, I mean, you never know who's going to come out. Maybe a player who we don't even know yet could appear, and he could be the next Lionel Messi, or he could be. All right, okay. Maybe a player we've never seen before could come out, and he could be the next Maldini. You never know. But I mean, there are a few in there. Joe Gomez, I think he's definitely got potential to start for England at a big tournament. So it depends if Walker's going to go to that right back spot, because obviously Trippier is not getting any younger, even though he's playing very well. By 2020, is he still going to be at that level, do you think?
I think the good thing about Trippier is that when you get older, you kind of the whole kind of how you see the game in your head, he's going to become a lot more mature in that aspect. He's not going to make as many mistakes, and he's always going to have the technique of that cross on him. So he's going to lose his pace, and I think the way that Southgate plays with wingers going up and down all game, we might see that Trippier comes on kind of halfway through a game to add that quality. But then again, we saw Ashley Young at the World Cup, the World Cup. And, he's, 32, 33, 34 even? And he still managed to kind of get up and down. I know his performances weren't brilliant. They were kind of average. But I think that was still good enough. And so maybe Trippier is going to kind of be a little bit like that. And just kind of... I mean, I'm excited to see how Trippier develops into an older and more mature player. I mean, what is he now? 28? 28?
Walker's 28.
28. So, in 2 years' time, he's going to be 30, Trippier. So he's going to be a lot more mature. His kind of position's going to be a lot better. His kind of mental awareness about the game is going to be a lot better. So I think maybe at 30 years old, we could see the best of Trippier.
But, Ben Chilwell for me is the player in that squad that I'm also very excited. Like Jadon Sancho and Ben Chilwell for me are the most exciting youngsters that I'm seeing in that squad, because Chilwell at Leicester, I think he's played a really good season. I mean, do you agree with me on that? I think Chilwell is really the future.
I love Ben Chilwell. He's brilliant. He's kind of been on the fringe. He's kind of played a few games for Leicester. Then it's been Fuchs, and they've kind of been swapped. But he's really cemented his place, and he's taken that chance. And he's brilliant. He's really, really good for Leicester this season. And when we saw him last time in the friendlies for England, he was once again just amazing. And I think one of the big disappointments of kind of these last few years is kind of how Luke Shaw's turned out. Obviously, we can't have his injury, and I think that's kind of pushed him back a bit. I mean, Ryan Bertrand was never going to become the next best England left back, And Danny Rose has kind of been a little bit disappointing. And kind of Bell Chilwell's, he's always been in the background, but I think he's come out of nowhere almost, because he's really cemented some good performances in the Premier League, and it's right that Gareth Southgate's picked that up and once again picked him to be in the England squad. And I mean, he's young, so I'm only looking forward to what is ahead for Ben Chilwell and how he can cement his place for Euro 2020.
So obviously we've gone into the players quite a lot, such as gods, including Michael Keane and Lewis Dunk. Not to forget Bettinelli. But the thing is should we now be looking towards the bigger picture with England? You know, we've spoken about these individuals. Should we be thinking, what can we expect from England in 2020? Because if I look at the players, if I compare it to other nations, I think, honestly, we are favourites to try and win, or at least get to the final of Euro 2020. Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's... Some would say stupid to look at 2020 now. But we are 2 years off. That's going to go so quickly, 2 years. I mean, we're going to have the qualifiers starting soon. I mean, technically, the Nations League are part of the qualifiers for Euro 2020. With kind of like these... Does anybody know how the Nations League works? I'm not going to try and explain how it works with kind of the playoff rounds and getting into the UEFA Nations League, getting into the UEFA 2020, whatever it is, that way. So, it's going to come around quickly. And Gareth Southgate knows that, and rather than kind of say, "Oh my God, it's the Euros," who we're going to pick? It's right that he's experimenting now, rather than leading up to the last few games before we go out to the tournament, and we have no idea if that works well or this works well. And the World Cup really showed what does work well, and I think all Southgate's got to do is build on that, kind of get that level of consistency. Because it's 2 years. Because it's 2 years on, players are going to mature by 2 years, and so they are naturally going to have a bit more consistency in them, and they are going to play to a higher level for a longer amount of time. So that's what's going to help this England squad. Because it's we're going to see a lot of players in their prime. Obviously, Kane's going to be probably in his prime. Jesse Lingard, we just mentioned Trippier, Chilwell's hopefully, if he continues the way he's going to have really kind of cemented a quality place. So, it's only exciting times for England. We're not going to go into the tournament thinking, "Oh my God, we're going to absolutely get hammered by Hungary." Like you said, we are going there, hopefully with a chance to win. But let's put Euro 2020 to one side, because it is in 2 years. Yeah. As short and as long as that is. Let's talk about Croatia. So, what kind of the last game? I think it's the last group game of the UEFA Nations League. Are we going to win?
Don't know really. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I hate these games. I think the Nations League is actually quite a silly idea, because you have to put out your best sides if you want to be competing, because they're trying to make it into a proper competition. But then again, when you get back to the Premier League, you've lost a lot of fitness, and it's just a bit frustrating, don't you think? But in terms of the game, I think we can win. Obviously, Croatia World Cup finalists are expecting them to really challenge us, but they lost very heavily to Spain towards the start of the Nations League. I think it was something like 7-1, something like that. I think that we will win actually, but I think it'll be more of a 1-0. Hopefully, we can see Jadon Sancho score that goal. That'd be great.
So that is the England squad done and dusted. Shall we go on to the previews for this week? Yeah. Yep. So there's a full fixture list this weekend, played across Saturday, Sunday. I think that's it. So just Saturday and Sunday. Obviously, we've got a couple of interesting games. So Palace Tottenham's going to be an interesting one, as is of course Manchester City, Manchester United, the Manchester derby. It's going to be a good weekend. So let's start with the previews with Cardiff Brighton. Harry, what do you make of that one?
Wow, what a thrilling game. No, well, we said that last week about West Ham versus Burnley, and it was a 6-goal game, so you never know with football, do you? Especially the Premier League. Cardiff, again, they're not in the worst form. They did lose to Leicester 1-0, didn't play terribly, didn't play particularly great. And as for Brighton, I think they're doing quite well. I think it'll be quite even, because both sides tend to be a little bit more defensive, don't you think? So when they come against each other, both teams probably going to go for it. You never know what's going to happen with this game. I would probably say a 2-2, actually.
2-2? See, I was going to go 2-0 Brighton.
Wow.
I just think Cardiff at home, that's where they need to win their games, because it's all right going away from home and just drawing. That's fine. You can deal with that throughout the season, picking up the odd win. Yeah, woo, wow, brilliant. But that's not going to keep you safe. So you need to win your home games, and I just don't see Cardiff doing it. Brighton are in a great run of form. Glenn Murray's in a great run of form. So yeah, I think 2-0 Brighton. Now, Huddersfield, West Ham. See, that's a tough one, because obviously West Ham surprised everyone by somehow scoring 4 goals last weekend. Huddersfield surprised everyone by scoring 1 goal last weekend. Huddersfield at home again. 1-1 for me, I think. Well, actually, Huddersfield aren't that good to score a goal every weekend, are they? I think 1-1. Yeah, 1-1.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And Huddersfield, yeah, I do have a bit of soft spot for them. And I'm really hoping they can build on that massive, and I'm not even joking, 1-0 win against Fulham. You know, that was quite an important game for them. West Ham, you know, they've shown their inconsistency throughout this season already. I really think at home, building on that last game, Huddersfield do have a chance to go out there this game. You know what? Why not? I'm saying, once again, 1-0 to Huddersfield.
I think you're deluded. You're not coming on next week. Leicester-Burnley. Obviously, the Leicester, great win last week in terms of the tragic offence and kind of doing it for the chairman. So, I'm going to go 2-1 Leicester.
Yeah, Leicester-Burnley. I thought Leicester played okay. They weren't particularly incredible against Cardiff. But moving on to this game, I think that they can do a good job against Burnley. Burnley haven't looked special. They haven't brought much flair this season, I don't think. Certainly nothing compared to last season, I don't believe. I think this is a game Leicester can really go out and win. I know some of the fans aren't so keen on Claude Puel's style, but I really think this is a game they can win, and I'm going to go 3-0 to Leicester.
So Newcastle-Bournemouth. Newcastle picking up the first Premier League win of this season last weekend. First, was it? Is that right? Yeah, first win last weekend. Against Bournemouth, you know, team we've talked about a lot. We don't favoritise. They're just in a good run of form, and it's just nice to talk about them because it's a nice story. But we're not Bournemouth fans. Just to, you know, any disclaimers out there. But anyway,
Huddersfield fans.
I think you can tell we're not Huddersfield fans. Newcastle Bournemouth. I'm gonna go for another 1-1. I think Bournemouth are going to score first, but Newcastle, with the Toonami behind them, are gonna make it 1-1.
I hate to say it because I don't mind Newcastle, to be honest, but I think that they're not going to be able to keep up a winning streak because Bournemouth, you know, we've already talked about how good they've been. They put out a really good performance against Man United. Wilson scoring, you got Brooks in behind him who can put out a goal. And Newcastle, they weren't particularly impressive again. I know I've said that about a few other teams, but they weren't particularly impressive, I didn't think. And Bournemouth have the firepower and the kind of skill to beat them, I think. So I'm going to go with 2-1 to Bournemouth.
At the Desert of Goals, St Mary's Stadium, it's Southampton-Watford. But I'm going to go 2-0 Watford. Or 2-0, 2-1. I don't. Am I that nice to Southampton? Do they get a goal?
Go with your gut.
Go with my gut. Oh, 2-1 Watford. Come on, Southampton, you can get a goal. Yeah, 2-1 Watford. Watford, I think, are going to come out firing after their loss last week. I don't think they can really afford to have many of those this season. And this is a test for Watford, really, because they've lost. They've lost again. Let's see what they're made of now. Let's see how they came back really well after losing to Bournemouth. Or getting stunk by Bournemouth. So they came back really well from that. Let's see how they come back from losing to Newcastle. And it's going to really kind of show to the rest of the Premier League what they're made of. Because if they come back regularly when they lose the odd game, then they can easily sustain their position.
Yeah, I would say a Watford win is quite likely in this one. I will probably go with let's say a 1-0 win for Watford. Yeah, I mean, not too much to add because Southampton got absolutely destroyed by City, as we both said would happen. And I don't think it will happen against Watford, even though they are in decent form. So let's just see. I'll stick with that 1-0.
Fair enough. 1-0. Fair enough. So Palace Tottenham, another London derby. 2 London derbies in a row for Palace. Palace don't look like the team they looked like at the end of last season with Roy Hodgson. Zaha is obviously still amazing, but Tottenham, are they going to slip up again against a mid-table side? I don't know. I think I'm going to go in my gut again. I'm going to go for Tottenham to win 3-1. 3-1 win. 3-1 win for Tottenham.
Sounds quite a convincing win for Tottenham, to be honest. But after that Wolves game and the way they were playing, recently, I'm not too sure. Call me pessimistic, but I feel like this is the kind of game that Tottenham do slip up once again. Palace put out a draw against Arsenal. Arsenal were playing quite well in that game, I thought, but they still managed to hold on. They had a lot of fight in them. And, they're not in the best of places at the moment. You could say the same for, the start of last season. So maybe they're going to salvage something from this one. And I'm going to say 2-2.
Okay, so fair enough. On to the 4 games of Sunday. Liverpool-Fulham, Chelsea-Everton, Arsenal-Wolves, and obviously the big one, Man City versus Manchester United. Liverpool-Fulham. Fulham, they lost to Huddersfield. They're not going to get any better. Their defence is shocking. 5-0. 5-0 Liverpool.
5-0, wow. I do agree. I don't think they're going to get particularly better, especially with the manager. I don't really think this manager is coping well to the Premier League too well. Jokanovic, isn't it? Yeah. I think that's his name. And, Schürrle, he was spoken about by some pundits. He didn't put in a good shift last game. And they were speaking about how they didn't have the integrity and they didn't have the aggression to go out and win that game, which was so important against Huddersfield because they are struggling. And Liverpool away is not a good fixture for them to bounce back. I'm going with 4-0 to Liverpool.
It's too nice. You're too nice.
Yeah, too nice.
Chelsea-Everton. Good win last week for Chelsea. Sarri's really... we talked last week about Sarri and how he's adapted to the Premier League. But, Marco Silva, he's a good manager and he sets his teams up well away from home. So I'm going to go for a 2-2.
So, first of all, I'd like to congratulate Chelsea on absolutely thrashing Bate Borisov 1-0 in the Europa League. But moving on from that, Everton. You know what? I think we've been relatively conservative with these results, even though we went for a cheeky 4-0 and 5-0. I really feel Everton are in good form. Marco Silva, I rate him, even though we just think Michael Keane is the next Maldini. I rate him, and, Richarlison can be ruthless from whether it's attack midfield or up front striker. He can be ruthless. This is a game which could go either way, but I'm actually going to go for a shocker, 2-1 to Everton.
Arsenal-Wolves. We talked about both teams today. Obviously, Arsenal bouncing back, Wolves bouncing back. Well, not Arsenal bouncing back specifically, but trying to capitalise on the possession and the good kind of periods of play that they had against Liverpool. Obviously against Wolves, who lost last week narrowly against Tottenham. Very narrowly, yeah. It's going to be interesting because you give Wolves the chance to counter, and they will probably finish. So Arsenal are going to have to watch how they go forward and when they go forward, because if they commit too many men forward, they're going to get left in. They're going to get left wide open, and the kind of Sokratis and Mustafi aren't going to be able to keep up with Cavallero and Jota and Raul and Traore, who's whiskey a nan off her feet if he ran past her. So I think.
Calm down, Mandy.
That's what I think. I think 2-1 Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, fair. I think Wolves were very unlucky against Spurs. And I think Arsenal, draw against Liverpool, they'll see as a good result, especially as they dominated play for many periods of the game. But, I think Wolves, it is time for them to start attacking a bit more. It's time for them to start scoring the goals that we expected when they came up with these new players. This is an opportunity to open up a team because Arsenal do play a high line. And I think even if they are playing so well, we could see another surprise win here. So I'm going to say Wolves win 2-1.
So you've got opposite to me then?
Yeah.
Okay. And the last game, the biggest game, wow. Manchester City versus Manchester United, 2-0 City.
Simple as that, is it?
Yeah, easy. Simple.
Right. This is an interesting one because obviously we were talking about earlier how Man United could bounce back in this fixture. This would give so much faith to the manager, to the club. Obviously just beating Juventus, even if it was very lucky. So it'll be interesting, but if I'm being honest, City can turn up and not play a particularly incredible game like they did against Tottenham and still win. Considering Tottenham are a strong top 6 side, it just really goes to show the kind of flair that they've got in that team. And despite how good it would be for United, I think that City really do have the players to go out and get the win. So actually for the first time this episode, I think I'm going to agree 2-0 to City.
2-0 City?
Yep.
You actually agreed with me on a prediction. Well, thank you. So, let's end it there. The previews are done. The Natter is done. So, thank you once again, Harry, for joining me this week. Thank you once again to you for listening. If you haven't heard the first podcast, please go back and watch it. You can find it on iTunes, on Spotify, and SoundCloud. So feel free to go and watch it. If you have any suggestions as to what you would like us to talk about, or if you've got any views on our opinions that we've kind of said this week, what is your view on Callum Wilson in the England team? Email thefootballnatter@gmail.com and make sure you join us next week for episode 3 of The Football Natter.